Hi.
You're Lady Triue.
I sure am. I'm here to offer you legacy. Legacy is in blood.
In episode 4 of Watchmen, there is some talk about masks and why they wear them. It's suggested that they wear masks to deal with trauma. Angela, or rather Sister Knight, rejects this, yet Laurie insists it's true, and it's here where we see something interesting. That trauma leads to a mask which establishes an identity. Let's dive into this for a second. For one, we have Angela. She has a unique experience in terms of trauma, therefore her identity is unique to her. Then we got the 7th Cavalry and the police, where a group of people share the same trauma, therefore allowing them all to hide behind the same mask. Then we have Laurie, who once wore a mask as well. The source of her trauma came from her parents, and her mask personas reflect that. What's also reflected in Laurie is that she is part of a legacy. Legacy being the word we want to explore. So it seems trauma contributes to identity, and when that identity is maintained in some form or fashion down the generations, it becomes a legacy. Now, Watchmen wastes no time in telling us how important legacy is. In the beginning of the episode, we're introduced to the trillionaire, Lady Triue. Lady Triue being the name of a legend known in Vietnam. Letting us know she knows the power of legacy. She then gets a couple to sign over their property to her because of this knowledge. She goes on to say legacy isn't in what we own, but in our blood. This resonates with the couple who failed in conceiving a child years ago. When Lady Triue presents them with a kid of their own trauma allows them to know the worth of this child, the worth of a legacy. Now, this scene does something very interesting. The moment they sign over their property, something crash lands there. Perhaps it's something that could have increased the value of the land dramatically. Perhaps a Superman baby crash landed there and they could have adopted a super child. Whatever the case, one thing was for certain. They no longer cared, because in their hands they held their own legacy. Lady Triue, in making this deal, makes a statement about killing the child if the deal goes south. She then claims to be joking before saying she was simply finding a home for the child where the child would never know where he came from. By doing this, Lady Triue suggests that not knowing where you come from is like having a piece of yourself killed. This must be something she believes in, as she attempts to pass on her own trauma through nightmares to her daughter, her own legacy. The spirit of Vietnam is with her, even in this new wonder she created. What's interesting is that Angela is from Vietnam, but its spirit, its essence, doesn't radiate with her. Perhaps because the trauma of Vietnam doesn't resonate with her. And this is where Reeves say pretty much the punchline to it all. As Lady Triue sits there and questions why he doesn't simply tell Angela the truth of her heritage, Reeves put it all into clarity when he says she's not going to listen. She has to experience things by herself. All people have a trauma that shapes their identity and their strength. Now, while it may be argued that trauma in itself is bad, Watchmen may be suggesting that not knowing the trauma of your own people may be worse. Trauma isn't just a story, it's a feeling that's understood on the emotional level. It's an experience that stays with you. Laurie learned the dark truth, but ultimately it made her stronger. Lady Triue trauma led her to become one of the most powerful and richest people on the earth. The story of their heritage isn't necessarily great, but it makes them stronger and proud. Someone not knowing of their heritage is cheated. There is a moment when Sister Knight and Looking Glass speaks. They call each other weird, but there seems to be a great sense of respect and trust behind it. They are two people, one a white guy and the other a black woman, yet they respect each other. They recognize strength no matter how different it may be. Their trauma is different, and so is the way their strength is shaped. Yet, they see each other. This is what legacy gives people. The title of this episode is, If You Don't Like My Story, Then Write Your Own. It comes from a book titled Things Fall Apart. To bring things full circle, it's about the importance of legacy and what happens when it's lost, or worse, when someone else writes it for you. Much like the story of these genetically engineered servants of Asmodeus. They have no history, no people, no legacy, no trauma. Therefore, they don't have much of a present, and as a result, no future. Because they have no story, Asmodeus writes one for them.
People who wear masks are driven by trauma. They're obsessed with justice because of some injustice they suffered. Ergo, the mask. It hides the pain.
I wear the mask to protect myself.
Right, from the pain.